In just 31 seconds, a single comment would detonate a media firestorm and end with an unprecedented on-air ejection that nobody saw coming. This is the story of how one talk show interview went from cordial to catastrophic, how politeness dissolved into pure chaos, and how a host stood his ground against what would become one of the most dramatic exits in television history. The studio lights were hot that morning. Piers Morgan sat behind his desk, straightening his tie, preparing for what he thought would be a standard celebrity interview. His guest was someone who had become a fixture in tabloid headlines, someone who had traded private life for public spectacle. Yea, Meghan Markle walked onto the set with the confidence of someone who expected the world to bend to her will. The audience applauded. Cameras rolled. Piers smiled his professional smile, the one he had perfected over decades of broadcasting. "Welcome to the show," Piers said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Thanks for joining us today." Meghan settled into her seat, crossing her legs, already looking slightly irritated by the studio temperature. "Well, I almost didn't come. Your production team was less than accommodating." The smile on Piers's face flickered for just a moment. "I apologize if there were any issues. We do our best to make all our guests comfortable." "Comfortable," Meghan repeated, looking around the studio as if inspecting it for flaws. "Is that what you call this lighting? I specifically requested softer tones. This is far too harsh." Piers glanced at his producer off camera, then back to Meghan. "We can certainly adjust if needed, but perhaps we should start with some questions. Our viewers are eager to hear from you." "Your viewers," Meghan said with a slight laugh. "Yes, I suppose they would be. They seem quite obsessed with every detail of my life, don't they?" "Well, you have lived a rather extraordinary life," Piers replied, keeping his tone measured. "From actress to duchess, that's quite a journey." Meghan leaned back in her chair. "A journey that your network has profited from extensively, I might add. How many headlines have you run about me? Hundreds? Thousands?" Piers raised an eyebrow. "We cover news that interests our audience. You're a public figure who has chosen to remain in the spotlight." "Chosen?" Meghan's voice rose slightly. "That's an interesting interpretation. I would say I've been forced into this position by a media that refuses to let me live peacefully." "With respect," Piers said, his voice still calm, but with an edge creeping in. "You've given multiple interviews, appeared at numerous events, and actively maintained a public presence. That doesn't exactly suggest someone seeking privacy." The temperature in the studio seemed to rise. Meghan uncrossed her legs and leaned forward. "So you're saying it's my fault that tabloids harass me? That photographers chase my car? That people like you make a living dissecting my every move?" "I'm saying," Piers replied carefully, "that there's a difference between privacy and publicity. Well, you can't court the latter and then complain about the former." Meghan's eyes narrowed. "That's exactly the kind of victim blaming I would expect from someone like you." "Someone like me?" Piers asked. "And what exactly does that mean?" "Someone who has built a career on tearing down women, on making cruel judgments, on pretending to care about truth while spreading gossip and lies." The studio went quiet. Even the crew seemed to hold their breath. Piers sat up straighter in his chair. "I've built a career on honest journalism and asking difficult questions. If you find that threatening, perhaps you should examine why." "Honest journalism," Meghan scoffed. "Is that what you call the hit pieces? The constant criticism? The way you twist every word I say?" "I call it accountability," Piers said, his voice growing firmer. "Something that seems to be in short supply in your world." Meghan stood up slightly from her chair, then sat back down, clearly agitated. "My world? You know nothing about my world. You sit here in your comfortable studio, protected by your platform, throwing stones at people you've never met." "I'm sitting here trying to have a conversation," Piers countered. "You're the one who came on this show. You agreed to this interview. If you didn't want to answer questions, why are you here?" "Because I was told this would be a fair discussion, not an ambush." An ambush? Piers looked genuinely surprised. I've asked you basic questions about your public statements. If that feels like an ambush, maybe the problem isn't with the questions. Meghan's jaw tightened. The problem is with people like you, who think you have the right to judge me, to question my choices, to act as if you're some sort of moral authority. I'm a journalist, Piers said evenly. It's literally my job to ask questions and hold public figures accountable. You've made claims in other interviews that have been disputed. I'm simply asking you to clarify. Disputed by whom? Meghan demanded. By the same institution that tried to silence me? By the same people who refused to protect me? Piers leaned forward on his desk. I'm not representing any institution. I'm asking you direct questions as a journalist. If you can't handle that, perhaps you're not ready for this level of public discourse. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Meghan's face flushed. Not ready? How dare you? Do you have any idea what I've been through? What I've sacrificed? I'm sure you've had challenges, Piers acknowledged, but so have millions of other people who don't have your wealth, your connections, or your platform. There it is, Meghan said, pointing at him, the classic deflection. Because I have resources, my pain doesn't matter? My struggles aren't valid? I didn't say that, Piers replied. I'm saying that claiming victimhood while living in luxury tends to ring hollow to people facing real hardships. Meghan stood up from her chair, completely this time. Real hardships? You think being hounded by the media isn't real? You think dealing with racism isn't real? You think having your mental health ignored isn't real? I think, Piers said, also standing now, that you've made very serious accusations without providing evidence. I think you've hurt people with your claims. And I think you're using this platform to play the victim when many would argue you're anything but. The studio was electric with tension. Crew members exchanged worried glances. I don't have to sit here and listen to this, Meghan said, her voice shaking with anger. I came here in good faith, and you've done nothing but attack me. I've asked you questions, Piers corrected. If you consider that an attack, then you're proving my point about not being able to handle scrutiny. Meghan grabbed her handbag from beside the chair. This is exactly why I don't trust the media. This is exactly why I've said what I've said. You're all the same. We're not all the same, Piers said firmly. Some of us actually care about facts and truth, not just narratives that make us look sympathetic. Facts? Meghan laughed bitterly. You wouldn't know a fact if it hit you in the face. You deal in sensationalism and cruelty. Piers crossed his arms. And you deal in half-truths and emotional manipulation. The difference is, I'm honest about what I do. Meghan took a step toward the edge of the set. I'm done here. This interview is over. You can't just walk out, Piers said. We're live on air. Watch me, Meghan shot back. A producer rushed onto the set, trying to calm the situation. Please, if we could just take a moment. Meghan turned to the producer. No, I'm not staying here to be insulted by this man. He clearly had an agenda from the start. Piers addressed the camera directly. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, our guest is choosing to leave rather than answer straightforward questions about her public statements. Meghan whirled around. Straightforward? You've done nothing but bait me, provoke me, and try to make me look bad. I've asked you to back up your claims, Piers responded. If that makes you look bad, perhaps you should reconsider making claims you can't support. I don't need to prove anything to you, Meghan declared. I know my truth. Your truth, Piers repeated, and therein lies the problem. There's no such thing as your truth and my truth. There's just the truth. Meghan's eyes blazed. The truth is that you're a bully. The truth is that you've made a career out of being cruel. The truth is that you're exactly what's wrong with journalism today. The truth, Piers said, his voice rising, is that you came on this show expecting softball questions and praise. You wanted a platform to spread your narrative without challenge, and when you met resistance, you couldn't handle it. I can't handle it, Meghan's voice reached a new pitch. I've handled more than you could ever imagine. I've dealt with abuse, with harassment, with threats, and I've done it with grace." "Grace," Piers said skeptically. "Is that what you call this display?" The producer tried again to intervene. "Perhaps we should take a commercial break." "No," Meghan said decisively. "I'm leaving. Right now." Piers turned back to the camera. "Well, there you have it, folks. A guest who can dish it out but can't take it." Meghan stopped in her tracks. "What did you just say?" "You heard me," Piers said. "You've spent months criticizing an institution, a family, a country. But the moment someone questions you, you fall apart." Meghan marched back toward the desk, her finger pointed at Piers. "I have not fallen apart. I am standing up for myself against a man who has no respect, no decency, and no integrity." "Big words from someone who's running away," Piers observed. "I'm not running," Meghan insisted. "I'm refusing to participate in this circus." "You're refusing to answer questions," Piers corrected. "There's a difference." Meghan looked at the producer again. "Get me off this set. Now." The producer looked helplessly between Meghan and Piers. "We still have 20 minutes of scheduled interview time." "I don't care," Meghan said. "I'm not staying another second with this journalist," Piers supplied. "Yes, that's what I am. A journalist doing his job." "Your job is to destroy people," Meghan spat. "Your job is to create conflict and drama." "My job is to seek truth and hold power to account," Piers replied. "If you find that destructive, maybe you should examine what you're trying to hide." Meghan's hands were shaking now. "I have nothing to hide. Unlike you, I've been completely transparent about my experiences." "Transparent?" Piers laughed. "You've made vague allegations without names, dates, or specifics. You've painted yourself as a victim while attacking people who can't defend themselves. That's not transparency. That's manipulation." "Those people can defend themselves," Meghan argued. "They have entire communications teams, unlimited resources, and the protection of an institution. And you have a multi-million-dollar media deal. A celebrity husband and a global platform," Piers countered. "Don't pretend you're powerless." Meghan pulled out her phone. "I'm calling my lawyer. This has gone too far." "Your lawyer?" Piers looked amused. "For what? I haven't defamed you. I've simply asked you questions you don't want to answer." Meghan was dialing now, her hands trembling with rage. "You've created a hostile environment. You've been deliberately provocative and disrespectful." "I've been a journalist," Piers maintained. "Something you clearly don't understand." The producer finally stepped between them physically. "Please, both of you, let's calm down." "I am calm," Piers said, though his voice was sharp. "I'm simply not backing down from doing my job." Meghan spoke into her phone. "Yes, I need you at the studio immediately. I'm being harassed by the host." Piers addressed the camera again. "You're witnessing something remarkable here. A guest calling her lawyer because she was asked questions in an interview she agreed to do." Meghan ended her call. "You're going to regret this. You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Is that a threat?" Piers asked. "It's a promise," Meghan replied coldly. "I have friends in very high places, people who can make your life very difficult." The studio went completely silent. Even the camera operators looked shocked. Piers's expression hardened. "Did you just threaten me on live television?" Meghan seemed to realize what she'd said. "I didn't threaten you. I simply stated a fact." "You implied you would use your connections to harm my career because I asked you difficult questions," Piers said slowly. "That's not a fact. That's a threat." "Interpret it however you want," Meghan said dismissively. Piers turned to his producer. "Did you get that on tape?" The producer nodded wordlessly. "Good," Piers said, "because I want there to be a clear record of what just happened here." Meghan realized her mistake. "You're twisting my words." "I'm doing nothing of the sort," Piers said. "You said what you said. On camera. In front of witnesses. Meghan's composure was cracking. This whole thing was a setup. You planned this from the beginning. I planned to ask you questions, Piers agreed. I didn't plan for you to threaten me, but here we are. I need to leave, Meghan said, looking around frantically. Where's the exit? The same place it was when you walked in, Piers said dryly. Meghan started walking toward the edge of the set, but Piers called after her. Before you go, I just want to be clear about something. Meghan stopped, but didn't turn around. You came on this show of your own free will, Piers continued. You agreed to an interview. I asked you reasonable questions about public statements you've made. You responded with accusations, insults, and ultimately threats. The audience has seen all of this. They can judge for themselves who was unreasonable here. Meghan turned slowly. The audience will see a powerful man bullying a woman who dared to speak her truth. The audience will see what actually happened, Piers corrected, which is a guest who couldn't handle basic scrutiny and resorted to intimidation when challenged. You don't know anything about me, Meghan said, her voice breaking slightly. I know what you've chosen to show the world, Piers replied. And right now, you're showing them someone who can't handle disagreement or questioning. Meghan wiped at her eyes, though there were no visible tears. This is exactly why people like me can't trust people like you. People like me have given people like you a platform, Piers said. Perhaps a little gratitude would be in order instead of threats and tantrums. That was the final straw. Meghan's voice became ice cold. I want him removed from this studio. Now. The producer looked confused. Removed? This is his show. I don't care whose show it is, Meghan said. Either he leaves or I'm calling security. Piers laughed genuinely now. You're going to call security on me? On my own show? You're creating an unsafe environment, Meghan insisted. I'm sitting at a desk asking questions, Piers said incredulously. How is that unsafe? Emotional safety, Meghan clarified. You're causing me emotional distress. Piers looked at the camera. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when feelings trump facts, when someone can't distinguish between being challenged and being attacked. Meghan was on her phone again. Yes, security. I need someone on set 3 immediately. The producer tried one more time. Please, can we just talk about this rationally? There's nothing rational about him, Meghan said, pointing at Piers. He's a monster. A monster, Piers repeated flatly. For asking questions. In an interview that you agreed to. 2 security guards appeared at the edge of the set, then looking uncertain about what they were walking into. Meghan pointed at Piers. I want him escorted out of here. The security guards looked at each other, then at the producer. This is his show, one of them said carefully. We can't just remove the host. Then I'm filing a formal complaint, Meghan declared, against him, against this network, against everyone involved in this ambush. Piers stood up from his desk and walked around it, standing in the center of the set. You know what? I've had enough. This interview is over. Not because you're demanding it, but because I'm ending it. I don't host shows where guests make threats and false accusations. False accusations? Meghan's voice was shrill now. Everything I've said is true. You've accused me of bullying, of creating an unsafe environment. Of being a monster, Piers listed. All because I asked you to explain your public statements. Those are absolutely false accusations. Meghan turned to the security guards. If you won't remove him, then escort me out of this building. I'm not safe here. One of the guards spoke gently. Ma'am, you're completely safe. We're right here. Not while he's here, Meghan insisted, pointing at Piers again. Piers held up his hands. I'm standing 10 feet away from you. I haven't moved toward you. I haven't raised my voice beyond normal conversation levels. Your claims of being unsafe are absurd. My feelings are not absurd, Meghan shot back. Your feelings are your own, Piers agreed. But they don't change reality. and the reality is that you've handled this interview poorly from start to finish." Meghan looked at the cameras, seeming to remember they were still rolling. "I want those cameras turned off." The producer shook his head. "We're live. We can't just turn off the cameras." "Then cut to commercial," Meghan demanded. "We're in the middle of a segment," the producer explained. Meghan's face was flushed with anger and embarrassment. "Fine. Then I'm leaving. Right now. And everyone will know exactly what kind of person Piers Morgan is." "They already do," Piers said calmly. "I'm the kind of person who asks difficult questions and doesn't back down when guests get uncomfortable." Meghan walked toward the exit, the security guards following at a respectful distance. Piers called after her one final time. "For what it's worth, I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. But you won't find it by running away every time someone challenges you." Meghan stopped at the door and turned back one last time. "And I hope you find some humanity. But based on today, I won't hold my breath." With that, she pushed through the studio door and disappeared. Piers stood alone on the set, looking at the camera. "Well, that was certainly unexpected. We invited a guest to have a conversation, to discuss her public statements and experiences. Instead, we got threats, accusations, and a dramatic exit." He walked back to his desk and sat down. "I've been doing this job for a long time. I've interviewed prime ministers, presidents, celebrities, and criminals. I've had disagreements and debates. But I've never had a guest threaten me with her powerful connections because I asked her to back up her claims." Piers shuffled his papers on the desk. "Some of you watching might think I was too hard on her. Others might think I wasn't hard enough. But I believe in one thing above all else in journalism: accountability. When someone makes serious allegations that affect other people's lives, they should be prepared to answer questions about those allegations." He looked directly into the camera. "What you witnessed here today wasn't bullying. It wasn't an ambush. It was journalism. And if public figures can't handle being questioned, they shouldn't make themselves public figures." The producer signaled for a commercial break. "We'll be right back after these messages," Piers said to the camera. "Though I suspect our scheduled guest won't be returning." As the cameras cut away, Piers sat at his desk, shaking his head slightly. The crew remained silent, processing what they had just witnessed. In all his years of broadcasting, through thousands of interviews, Piers had seen guests get angry, defensive, emotional, and confrontational. But he had never seen someone completely unravel over basic questions, escalate to threats, and then try to have him removed from his own show. The interview that was supposed to last an hour had combusted in under 30 minutes. What started as a standard celebrity interview had devolved into a masterclass in how not to handle media scrutiny. Piers didn't feel victorious. He felt tired. Tired of a culture where feelings mattered more than facts, where victimhood was currency, and where asking questions was treated as an attack. But he also felt resolute. This was exactly why his job mattered. Because someone had to ask the difficult questions. Someone had to push back against narratives that didn't add up. Someone had to stand firm when guests expected softballs and praise. The commercial break ended. Piers straightened his tie and faced the camera once more. "Welcome back," he said. "As you can see, our guest has chosen not to return. So instead, let's talk about what just happened and what it means for public discourse." He spent the remainder of the hour breaking down the interview, playing back key moments, and discussing the broader implications of what had transpired. He didn't gloat. He didn't mock. He simply presented what had happened,